and Betty Davis are going to have to be getting out of here, going back to New York. And so I'm going to put Ralph at the top of the agenda. And then we'll have a report also from Lisa. I wanted to say that one of the things that I certainly tried to do on yesterday with this conference was not simply to lay out the fact that we are consolidating this national Black political agenda for self-determination, and not simply talking about what we're going to be doing coming forward, but also struggling to place what it is that we're doing in some political context. Because obviously everything that we're talking about requires struggle against white power imperialism, and that is important. But sometimes imperialism doesn't come in its own face. In fact, increasingly over the last 2 or 3 generations, it's been extremely difficult for imperialism to step forward in its own face. And because of this, we've seen the emergence of what Kwame Nkrumah characterized as neo-colonialism. This is when white power cannot easily govern masses of people directly. When the white man stands over us, we've always said, you know, the movement had developed to such a point was get the white man. Get the white man out of here, kill whitey. You know, this had become, you know, like a prominent slogan among oppressed peoples around the world. And neo-colonialism is something that we see emerge at that time in history where the masses are conscious of colonialism and have developed a state of resistance that makes it difficult, if not impossible, for white power to dominate us directly. And so neo-colonialism is that instance where direct white power, direct colonial rule is indirect rule. There's a man whose name was Frederick Lugard. He was British, and he worked for some major corporations in England. And England, as most people know, up until 1945, controlled actually a quarter of the land mass of the world, and a quarter of the world's population dominated by England. And so England had a lot of territory that it controlled in Africa, and a particular group of territories was something that it was paying attention to, and it sent this man Lugard to look at these 2 particular territories that they wanted to combine into one administrative entity. Went there, and with him went his mistress at the time, Shaw. He later married Flora Shaw, but Flora Shaw was a well-known, prominently established journalist of her own, in her own right. And so England had given Lugard the responsibility of combining 2 territories in West Africa into one administrative whole. And while they were doing that, they were looking at what this thing could be called. They wanted to give it a name. And so Flora Shaw, Lugard's mistress, said, why don't we call it nigger area? And that is what they named this territory. And of course, nigger area is what you now know as Nigeria. And that's where Nigeria comes from, nigger area. And but Lugard was the one who really developed this whole concept of indirect rule. And he decided that it was fruitless to continue to try for the white man to continue to try to control these territories directly. And so he really developed this whole concept of indirect rule. let the oppressed administer the territories for us. And the oppressed, they eat fufu, just like the rest of us. You know, these neo-colonial, they know the dances. You know, they're from the same ethnic groups and what have you. Let them become the rulers. And so neo-colonialism is something that's been around for a while. And I want to mention this because despite the fact that it's been around for a while and a lot of intellectuals have discussed this question of neo-colonialism, it still seems to be relatively successful, although there is a crisis of neo-colonialism that we can see happening around the world. If you look at Cuba, Batista was a neo-colonial tool of the United States. He ran Cuba for the United States. So you saw the revolution overthrew him. Somoza in Nicaragua, a tool of the United States. And they got rid of him. They even successfully used, what's the comrade's name out of Panama, Noriega was their tool up until the Nicaraguan revolution created a certain kind of crisis that made him useless. What's the name? Hussein, Saddam Hussein. He was their guy. He functioned for them, and they used him to start a war with Iran, with the objective of destroying the power of both Iran and Iraq. So neo-colonialism is something that's been around for a while, but we've seen a crisis because though they used him in that fashion, the fact is he became a problem. You know why Saddam Hussein became a problem? He became a problem because he was trying to industrialize Iraq. And if you had an industrialized Iraq, where all this oil was coming from, that means that the people now have their own use for their oil. They can now use their own oil, and there's no basis for them just exporting oil to the corporations, the United States and other places like that. So the imperialists require what they like to refer to as underdevelopment, which simply means exploited. They require that people do not have their own capacity, because at the moment you have your own capacity, then that means that you're not dependent on this parasite that's sucking your blood. And there's still people who actually believe that the slave master is the one who feeds the slave, when it's obviously the other way around. It's the slaves who feed the slave master, his children, send his children to school. It's colonialism that's kept England afloat. If you look at a place like France, for example, where they have they control 14 so-called Francophone so-called states in West Africa, where they receive directly 65% of the foreign investment resources. 65% go directly to the French treasury. That Africans in these territories don't even see it. Ivory Coast, Central African Republic, Cameroon, whole bunch, they never even see it. It goes directly to French treasury. Then France charges them 20% handling fees. But no, it does. It charges them 20% handling fees for stealing the 65%. So that's 85% of the gross domestic product that comes from these territories going directly to France, and which obviously the people cannot live off. Not only can they not live, because that leaves them 15% they try to live off, and then when a black petty bourgeoisie skims it off the top, then the people are lucky if they have 5% of the gross domestic product to try and survive. So they can't live off it. So what do? They borrow from France. So they borrow their own money from France, and they have to pay commercial fees to France for borrowing the money. This is what neo-colonialism does. This is the kind of relationship that we have with white power all over the world. We feed them, we clothe them, we house them. And when you go to Africa, any place in Africa, with some minimum exceptions that you will find in South Africa and perhaps in Zimbabwe, that's in a state of deterioration now, that you might find in some places minimally in Nigeria, any place in Africa, there's no infrastructure. There are no roads. And you know, those roads are not in Sierra Leone. Those roads are not in Ghana. Those roads are not in Sudan and all those other places. But you know where those roads are? Those roads are in Amsterdam. Those roads are here in the United States. Those roads are in France and other places. Those are resources that came from those places that built and sustained Europe. This is the parasitic relationship that we have with white power today. And this is one reason you'll have to really forgive me, because I have no respect at all for the social system. I have no respect for white power in any way at all. There's nothing right that it does. It can't tell me to stop sagging. It can't tell me to do any damn thing. It's a brutal social system that destroys the lives of millions of people every day. And it's determined to keep people. There's no accident. When they're killing us, it's no accident. The police, the military, everything that we're looking at got its foundation in history, in modern history. Capitalism itself established the state as an enterprise for the purpose of exporting and maintaining the control of oppressed peoples around the world. And in this country, its specific features have been defined by taking this land from the indigenous people here who are now in these damn concentration camps, stealing half of Mexico, and keeping African people in a state of slavery. This is how the state emerges here. This is what defines it. This is what gives it its role, what it does. That's why in England for years, there was no guns carried by police. Why were no guns carried by police? They didn't need to carry guns in England. They were carrying guns in Nigeria. The English were. They were carrying guns in India and all these other places where the British dominated people. And that's because the state has its role. It was born in society for the purpose of maintaining the status quo, to protect the social system, and the social system that came into existence in the world after feudalism was destroyed in Europe was capitalism. And capitalism was born as a consequence of slavery and colonialism and imperial white domination of the world. And so the state is there to protect that. So they didn't have to have the damn armed police in England at that time. Now you see more armed police in England. Why? Because more of the Africans and other people are now in England. They have a domestic colony just like they do in this country. And this is why they're armed to the teeth in this country. And the Europeans have always feigned amazement at why there was so much violence and gun violence and so many guns in America. The guns in America were here because the whole American enterprise was started by having to kill people, to take their land and keep them enslaved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody's armed to the teeth. And it's only recently that you and I got a gun, and now they want to take it back. That's the truth. The reputation of Mexicans and black people always having knives and razors, that's the only thing we can have, because it's illegal for us to have guns, right? And if they control us with sticks, it'd be illegal to have a stick. So this is what we're looking at. This is the kind of relationship that we have. And so when they killed that boy, that 23-year-old boy in Milwaukee last night, it wasn't some mistake. Anymore, it wasn't a mistake when that white man killed that child in Huntsville, Alabama. Why did the white man kill the child? Why is there a George Zimmerman? Why have there been Ku Klux Klans and all those other entities? Because of the way this whole entity was created. Because unlike in England and France and old European places where you had the movement from the feudal control, feudalism was a mode of production too, you know, and where you had the kings and they had their troops and all of this that controlled the people. Unlike that, you're talking about people who were living under feudalism in England, in Europe, now coming to this land, this territory, seeking their fortunes and becoming rich in the process of doing that. And there was no established state. Who was the state? The British were the state in these territories. And the white people here fought the British to take the damn territory from that group of thieves for themselves. So there was no state like it was in France, like it was in Holland and other places. So you had these white people who developed and stole this land. First, taking it from the indigenous people. This was not the government. This was ordinary white people who they sent out there, and they actually gave white people land. If you can take this land, hold this land, it's yours. They were called, what were they called during this time? Yes, they were the white settlers. They did the same thing, by the way, in Rhodesia. They actually paid white people, you come here, help kill the indigenous people here in Africa. They gave you land. They gave land and land. That's why they upset with Mugabe. This little, I don't even want to talk about Mugabe. But anyway, because he confuses the issue a lot for a lot of people, right? Because that's how the white people got the land. That's how they got this land. And so the white people themselves became like extensions of the incipient state as it was emerging. The Texas Rangers, for example, were initially just a group of white people. Did you know that? The Texas Rangers were not a government entity. They started off as a group of white people who were killing Mexicans and the indigenous people here and taking that land. That's the Texas Rangers. They later became a government entity. But the point is that white people here and in places like South Africa and in places like Israel became instruments of state power, initially informally, and so more and more, that's what you looked at, how the state itself consolidated itself. So you have a history of vigilantism, the Ku Klux Klan, other kinds of organizations whose primary responsibility to maintain the status quo was to control the niggers and control the Indians and control the Mexicans whose land and resources have been stolen from them. So there was no police. The white people were the police. And the white people were the police in the South up until 1966. And I can tell you actually how it happened when we overthrew that whole nonviolent stuff. And now when white people came out and to attack these demonstrations, they said it ain't happening this way, and Africans started kicking their butts, and it became unreliable. White people became unreliable because they were only bold in killing us when either we didn't have the confidence and organization to fight back, or when we were under some philosophy of not fighting back. Now, when you see this whole movement emerge saying Black Power and saying that we ain't going to jail like this no more, then white people became unreliable because people found out that they could run in the other direction. You understand? So they became unreliable. So they had to organize specialized teams of cops, military forces, and that's where in 1972, you see the SWAT teams coming about as a consequence of this confrontation they had in Los Angeles, California, with the Black Panther Party. You see them begin to develop more and more. There used to be a cop would come to your house to do this and that. They don't come to your house by themselves anymore. They come in teams now. They have organized this thing of oppression because they cannot rely on ordinary white people, generally speaking, to do it. But when white people do it, and most often the white people get away with it because they're extensions of the state, not because, ooh, look at bad George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman lives in the United States of America on stolen Indian land with resources created by stolen Black labor. And the state facilitates that, the prison system, the courts, the police, the military that's used to go all around the world and continue to steal people's resources because the economy depends on it, relies on it. It's no foreign policy accident. Ooh, this is a bad foreign policy guy, or Trump is a bad. I've heard so-called progressives who are upset with Trump because he's upsetting our allies, quote unquote, because he wants to remove, get rid of NATO. He doesn't want to fund. What are you talking about? These are guys who are supposed to be progressive. These are guys who are supposed to be on our side. And their critique of Trump. And anyway, neocolonialism is the problem. The only reason I started off on this rant was because neocolonialism comes in a lot of different faces. When Jesse Jackson was carrying water for Clinton becoming the U.S. ambassador, unofficial ambassador to Africa, that was neocolonialism. It was neocolonialism every time Al Sharpton, somebody killed somebody now committing, Al Sharpton would take them on a fruitless demonstration, thousands of people, and exhaust them with ridiculous chants, and then militantly get down on their knees and pray for a better day. That was neo-colonialism that was at work. And neo-colonialism takes the shape that's required at the moment. And so neo-colonialism comes youthful and dynamic today. Sharpton is gone. He's a spent shell. Jesse Jackal is a spent shell. Now it's a youthful neo-colonialism, dynamic neo-colonialism that we see in these streets. I was in Ferguson. You should have seen the money that came into Ferguson, Soros money. I was there. I saw it. All of a sudden, Negroes had huge buildings that they were operating out of, and they sent organizers, and some of these neo-colonial forces, I mean, they're connected to the SEIU, labor unions, which is nothing but an arm of the Democratic Party. Soros, tons and tons of money. Now the Ford Corporation. And we were engaged in a struggle from the beginning. That's why those Negroes could not put out a demand. Here, this Negro supposed to be the militant Black Lives Matter guy. And Hillary Clinton said, what you want? Because they could disrupt the Hillary Clinton presentation. That, they militant because they disrupted Hillary Clinton's speech. Hillary said, well, what you want? What's your demands? They say, well, we don't have any demands. We just want to know what's in your heart. Anybody, am I the only one that saw that? No. Hillary said, what's in my heart? Yeah, first of all, if Hillary is a biological phenomenon, because I'm sure that if somebody, when she's autopsied, they're going to find an empty space right there where her heart's supposed to be. But that's a different question. You understand? So Hillary gives them a quick lesson, says that you can't base your demand, you can't base the struggle with me. You got to say, what are your policy demands? What do you want from us? And that became an embarrassment. And at the same time, they're being embarrassed, and I'm kicking their asses. I'm kicking their asses. Well, first of all, for hijacking a movement of those young people who rose up. And the damn young people on right there on Canfield Drive were more advanced than these students who come up with their hashtags and shit like that. There was no hashtag Black Lives Matter that came off the streets at Canfield that took me to Ferguson. It was not Black Lives Matter. It was because those people rose up and they said, kill the police. Kill the police. That's exactly what they said. And don't act like that's strange, because that was a popular chant in the 1960s. They said it differently, off the pigs. You understand? And so that's what the people were saying there. And then these Negroes come in there, these militant hip kids with hashtags and connections to monies from Soros and the Ford Foundations and training and from labor unions and what have you, that's a part of the Democratic Party. And then they have now, and if you got President Barack Hussein Obama speaking up for Black Lives Matter, you know damn well that it cannot possibly be for you. And that's what he's defending, because he's smart enough to know, let these militant sellouts, work. Militant selloutism is the only kind that works. That old time handkerchief head selloutism doesn't work today. So make it computer literate, make it brand experts, make it hip hop selloutism. And that's exactly what they have done. And that's the struggle, one of the struggles we're involved in. And we've been struggling with them for a while now. When I say with them, I'm talking about, we've been struggling against this whole attempt to muddle the water, to muddy the water. Because we knew what a movement, we're today at a situation where people were running around a field of burn. And running around, this is the now. These are the real revolutionaries. Now, they are not for Hillary in the beginning, right? They feel the burn. Then you got people all out for Hillary. I mean, what kind of damn slogans are that? This is in 1963. You had Malcolm X talking about the difference in the Black Revolution and the Negro Revolution in 1963. We had later on, Malcolm X, speaking about elections, saying it's the ballot or the bullet. And we had in 1966 the demand for black power. This was African people addressing our own situation. That sounds more like what those Africans in Canfield Drive had to say than feel a burn or hands up, don't shoot. Please, hands up, don't shoot, I pray. Hands up, don't shoot, I hope. Hands up, don't shoot straight. I mean, it's just a whole ridiculous, thing. And so we fight against that tooth and nail, and people say, well, y'all just nitpicking because they just learn my ass. Go learn on somebody else's time. Now, we spent too much bloodshed, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why stay alive if you're not going to learn the lessons of the past, right? Why stay here, And this is why we engage in the struggle. That's why I spent so much time on yesterday going through the history of this coalition. And now what is happening is, what you see is that we come forth. We've been struggling over these demands, and look at what we said even in our founding documents. And now you find that in Soros and the Ford Foundation website that's called, they rebranded themselves now because we mess with them on that whole Black Lives Matter thing. It's Black Power Matters. We telling me, who are you telling Black Lives Matter? Who are you saying that to? Black Lives Matter, okay, and, right? So anyway, that's part of what it is that we were doing with that. And it's really important for us to be able to contextualize this, because I spend time talking like this because frankly, the coalition is comprised of a number of different organizations and institutions. And we all bring our political views and understanding into this process. And when we are at our best, we make it clear when we are here of whether we're speaking for the coalition, as a coalition. But I am here, in this coalition as chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. And you can't do enough. There's nothing that the Democrats or Republicans can do. There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. They can have a Negro man, presidential candidate, a Negro woman, presidential candidate. They can have a white man, white woman. They can have Mexicans. They can go to these cold places and get people from these other territories and ethnic and national sources and make them president of the United States. I don't give a damn. I'm jealous of this whole question of power. And I'm saying that I'm jealous of that. We've experienced too many centuries of somebody having power over our lives to be able to say that just because they call themselves a Democrat or Republican, that, okay, you can have the power. I say that we have to come to the conclusion that nobody else will ever govern us again. That's our responsibility. That's our responsibility to do that. And it is an abdication of our responsibility as human beings to say, okay, we'll live with this and then let somebody else govern us. Let's see if this person is going to treat us right now. I mean, they write an article saying 200, it's going to take 200. It would take 228 years for the average black family to accumulate the wealth that an average white family has. 228 years. I don't even know how somebody could write that. You see, this is what they said. This is your prediction for never having a future. And I say that's unacceptable. I don't give a damn what the Constitution says. I don't care what Obama says. I don't care what the Democrats or Republicans say. I don't care what the U.S. Army, CIA, FBI say. I don't give a damn what any of them say. I have a responsibility in my lifetime to overturn this relationship that we have with white power. Anyway, I've talked too long. So what we're going to do is I thought we had a really fruitful day on yesterday. We've accomplished most of what had to be done with this conference. There's some few things that we want to do. Chimaringa, at a little later, I want you to just say a little bit about the protocols, but I'm going to do this as expeditiously as possible. Some people are going to have to get on the road going back to their locations and what have you. And some people are going to say, well, hell, if I didn't know you were going to do any more than this, I would have left yesterday. I know that's what I was thinking about when I was looking at the agenda. I said, Ralph politely asked me in a very liberal way, are we going to do those reports on tomorrow? Because I have to get out of here by 11. So what I want to do is, with your permission, is to go ahead and move the agenda forward. What we are looking for, the big day is the convention in November, the big 2 days. And I am confident that we can make this something bigger than we've ever done before in the coalition will happen this November. Everything is right for us to take advantage of that. So, Ralph, if you're ready, 15 minutes. And we did that to everybody yesterday too. All right, come on up, Ralph. Uhuru. This is Brother Ralph Pointer, who chairs the Black Political Prisoner Working Group, the coalition. Uhuru, Ralph.
Uhuru. Well, thank you, Chairman. And as Chairman said yesterday, don't give Ralph the microphone, because he knows what happens when I get the microphone. But I'm going to be as brief as possible, and because so much has been said. And so this is a report on what's happening with the Committee on Political Prisoners. And so that I think that's mission impossible when we talk about changing the minds of the people we're working with, the people in our community, our allies, our so-called allies, and the people we have to deal with. And in Mission Impossible, they say, this is your mission if you choose to accept it. And I have chosen to accept that position of changing the minds of people to make them able to understand the necessity of freeing our political prisoners. So I must say to you, without the help of my sisters, Betty Davis and Lynn Stewart, it would be a mission impossible. And on the way down to this event, Betty Davis said to me, listen, Ralph, be careful of what you say, because the organizations that you are able to speak before have diminished drastically in the past 8 years because of your attack on Mr. Obama, your attacks on his candidacy, your attacks on his history. And as a matter of fact, after one speech I had given before Mr. Obama became president, Betty said to me, well, how soon do you think you'll be able to stand before people of color and make an address? And me being in my funny mood, looked at my watch and said, what time is it now? Because I knew how bad, no, I didn't know how bad this man was going to be. I knew he was bad, but I didn't know he was that bad. And when I say, what time is it now? Let's just wait until he does something outrageous. So it took about 7 years. People began to say, wait a minute, because they hadn't studied his history and they hadn't listened to Chairman. And so, as Betty has told me, start wrapping it up. I will report on what we have done. Now, we have started a blog talk radio program dedicated to political prisoners. It has become very successful due to the work of Betty Davis, who did all of the footwork on this, made it happen, and we are being picked up by many other blog talk stations. and we are on an FM station in Washington, D.C., regularly once a week, 2 hours. So if you have an issue, Tuesday from 9 to 10 p.m., you can call in on this Blog Talk Radio and get the message. For example, the incident that happened in Huntsville or all over the country, anything that relates to our liberation, you can call in on. And we also give a critique of the day's events, why things are happening. And it's called Ralph Pointer, What's Happening? And I'll ask Betty to make sure that everyone has a card, and we should leave one of these cards with that information that you should give me a call when you're going to call in, and so that we can look on the screen to see who it is, identified by your phone number, and then we give you time to speak. And this is the only group I'm able to speak before, because this is one of the few groups that I'm able to speak before, because the people in this audience haven't been stymied by the Dred Scott decision. And I guess everyone here knows that decision. A slave, wherever he's caught, can be returned to slavery, whether he's in a free or a slave state. Now, many of our brothers and sisters, when I say are stymied by the Dred Scott decision, is that they take away our right of self-defense. That is armed struggle. And if you study the history of guns, as Chairman has alluded to, Betty Davis is going to hand me this, and I'm going to have to ask her to speak. Oh, yes, she wants me to read my credo, the beginning of every program, and I think it says a lot, and I will do so. My credo is this: the overriding element in every situation or circumstance in a Black life is racism. Birth, elementary school, housing, health, food, etc. Black lives have never mattered, except during slavery and other circumstances where money is being made by our laborers for others. The modern death penalty, 80% Black, moved lynching indoors. The police, as the army of occupation, have taken lynching outside again. And the lynch mob is the racist system, including the courts and the media. And because the lives of our heroes and sheroes who once protected us in our community do not matter to us, the people, our political prisoners are now dying in captivity. They are tortured and isolated. Only armed struggle can recreate our image in our own minds as well as the minds of others. Wake up, now is the time. Now, I say that and I repeat it because we must bring voice to reality. And our so-called people, when I open up every program with brothers and sisters, and I make it clear, my brother and my sister, who is a person who has a unity of purpose, and that purpose is to free concretely every person on the planet. Concretely, not just in words, but in deeds. That's my brother and sister. And when you use this formula to many of the people we are working with today, you will find out that, excuse the expression Mugabe, but it's none but ourselves. And those are the people who have a unity of purpose. We are few, but our message is very important, and people will learn the importance of our message every day when what we say becomes true. Our political education must enable us to predict tomorrow. While our program is archived, and I am so proud that we talk about what happened today, what's going to happen tomorrow based on our understanding of history. And when it comes true, time after time after time, people say, how do you do that? Very simple, you learn. And I've had great teachers. And one of my teachers was Queen Mother Moore. And I remember the time that she woke me up and she said, you're a teacher. You're supposed to be smart. Do you understand that we are nothing more than a colony within the continental United States? And I says, now I was a college graduate. I had been teaching school for 8 years, and I thought I was politically hip. And then I began to understand reality. There was somebody voicing reality to me. And I was ready for the lesson. But many people are not ready for the lesson. And I'm going to jump again to Betty, who said to me, Ralph, be careful of the things you say, because you're beginning to limit the groups that you can speak before. But this is the same Betty who said to me, and said on our Blog Talk Radio, who says publicly, we are the Vietnamese, the new Vietnamese, so we better start acting like Vietnamese. And so she's telling me to be careful. And I think of our sister, Lynn Stewart, who states and writes clearly that the Micahs, the Coreys, and the Gavins are our serious shepherds, and we as lesser shepherds are enabled to work only by their efforts. Many of our political prisoners didn't and should not have asked lesser shepherds when and how to act in defense of our freedom. And so my litmus test is with everybody who's supposedly in this movement. How do you see Gavin and the others many years ago who fought for our freedom? They are in jail. Well, the way they think about it, as oppressors, as those who have all of the advantages given to them by oppressors, and they are not willing to give it up, and therefore they do not support our political prisoners. And a young woman said to me, who spent 7 years in jail fighting on our behalf, on behalf of the movement. She says, you know, Ralph, it is unthinkable for a white political prisoner to go before the board without a lawyer. And we have our political prisoners go before the parole board without lawyers. That's the way it is done. Now, one of our supporters, freedom fighters, Ray Lavaseur, was in jail with one of the political prisoners, and they made a pact. If they got out of jail, the one who got out of jail first, and Ray got out after 22 years, they would form an organization of lawyers and defense committees. And boy, the lawyers, they don't want to hear about a defense committee, because the defense committees tell truth and propagandize, make our political prisoners human, and the lawyers want to keep it in a little box, want to keep it to themselves. And so they made a pact that whoever gets out first would start this organization. And so who did Ray Lavaseur turn to when he got out of jail? He turned to Lynn Stewart. And Lynn Stewart said, of course we must do that. And one of the most liberal, and I use that term advisedly, one of the most liberal legal organizations is the Lawyers Guild. And Lynn Stewart has taken it upon herself with others from Rhode Island, Ben, and so many of the other lawyers within the organizations who have freedom in their hearts and minds, because the organizations themselves and the leadership does not. And so we fought that fight, and I had given up on the Lawyers Guild many years ago while Lynn was in prison, and she called me from prison and said, don't do it, get out there and fight, because there are people within the group who will support political prisoners, but the group itself, the overall group, will not. And so from that day forth, we've been looking for people within any organization, lawyers that is, who will support our political prisoners. And to date, we have 80 lawyers who are willing to work for our political prisoners. Now, the next question is, it gets very technical. And at the last meeting we went to, they went into this person sends to that person, who sends to the next person, who sends to the next person. And of course, Sister Lynn stood up and said, what about our brothers and sisters sitting in jail? They don't have time for this committee, to that committee, to the next committee. And because of her parole conditions, Lynn Stewart is not allowed to converse or write or have any information dealing with political prisoners or anybody who's been in jail. And she says, you can't write to me, but you can write directly to Ralph because he has connections with lawyers. My son and my daughter are lawyers. And of course, I can't use Lynn as a connection to political prisoners. And as always, everything is a code word in this society. Get the code. People are sending me letters, and I get technical and political advice from lawyers who are close to me, and we're trying to make this a reality. But it is a mission impossible, as Chairman O'Malley has told us, because the people's minds, as a friend of mine once said, they turn the people's minds to mush. And we're trying to turn them back into minds to support ourselves. And I've been told that I have 0 minutes. And so I say, as an example of what has happened, I hear Martin Luther King's name all over the place. But I don't hear Frantz Fanon. I don't see that anywhere. So I'm going to say Frantz Fanon. Remember that. I'm going to see Henry Highland Garnett. Let your motto be resistance. We have to bring voice to reality. And as we learned back in the 60s, that when the fiction or the truth, when the truth of a person's life is more painful than the fiction that they have created for their lives, then the truth becomes the enemy. Well, we must tell them the truth. We're in trouble here, folks. Pick your allies and pick your allies carefully and know which ones are real and which ones are not. And at this day and age, we have to be careful of all of those who have been stymied by the Dred Scott decision saying, you shall not use arms in your defense. And that hurts our political prisoners, because every time we say support political prisoners, somebody says, well, gee, didn't that person carry a gun? And I'm saying, or kill a cop. And I'm saying, yeah, Sekou Odinga, who just got out after 23 years, was there to support Assata Shakur to get her out. Don't tell me that we shouldn't support Sekou Odinga, Kwesi Balagoon, who died in jail, or many of the others are about to die in jail. And I will conclude with this. In writing and listening to and hearing from political prisoners, Sundiata Acoli, who was one of the great ones, is losing a little heart in jail. Because, as he stated many years ago, the faith that our movement would bring us home is greater than any faith of any religion, beyond what they could imagine. He's beginning to lose faith, and that cut me to the quick. I don't know how many years later, after he wrote that letter, and I read it, and Leonard repeated it many times, and now he writes letters not so strong in his faith. We see Leonard Peltier said his only hope of being free is that Obama frees him. That cut me worse than a knife could have cut me. His only hope is us. He has to know it. All of the political prisoners have to know it, and we have to get out there and do our job. I have accepted the mission impossible, Chairman, and I will continue working as long as you and the committee stop embarrassing me publicly. Thank you. Uhuru.
I really want to thank Ralph Poynter for that report. If only because he reminds us of these soldiers. I was very close to Sundiata Acoli for many years. In fact, he wrote a regular column for the Burning Spear newspaper. Our relationship was disrupted. By intervention by another person who was a political prisoner who is relatively well respected today. But Sundiata was a giant. The humility of Sundiata. Physically, he's a, pretty small guy. But when the police stopped that car on the New Jersey Turnpike, where he and Assata were in that car, and the police, as most people know, shot Assata with our hands up. They shot Assata. And Sundiata courageously fought them right there on the highway, and ended up successfully defending his life. And I think the cop died. Did the cop die? No. The cop didn't die. Just wounded. Okay. And then he picked Assata up and put her in the car. And they drove as far as well, but Assata was dying. So he stopped and put Assata out for her to be retrieved, and she was arrested, but to get some kind of medical care. I mean, this guy is just a giant. He has so much humility, and I love Sundiata. Sundiata was an educator. He was a mathematician, great mathematician, and he turned all of that away and joined the Black Panther Party. And at a time where somebody, if you don't remember it yourselves, if you look at the history of that, where the Panthers were being attacked all over this country, they were being gunned down, killed, etc. And a group of soldiers who were associated with the Black Panther Party went underground. In New York City, they declared that anytime a cop killed an African, a cop would die. And for a brief period of time in New York, the rate of police killings went down dramatically in New York because cops started dying as a consequence of that. That happened in New York. How's that? Didn't matter. That happened in New York. And I remember talking to one brother who was with that force, and he talked about how he was being hunted by the police. They had his picture, his info, and what have you, and how one day he was on the subway, riding on the subway, and a cop got on the subway in the same car and sat across from him on the subway car. And as they're riding along, he saw in the cop's face that he recognized them. So when the cop indicated that he recognized, he said he put his hand in his jacket. He just put his hand in his jacket, and they're riding along just like this on the subway. When they got to the first stop, the cop got off. The cop got off. And the thing is that it's our respect for the state, the oppressor state, more than anything that keeps us from fighting back. We have so much respect for the oppressor state. I think it was Huey P. Newton said something about, what did he say about the state being something that, no black person should respect, but that's effectively what happened. It's because we respect the state. The state confers upon itself an actual religious-like covering. And you see it when you go to court, and you've got this priest sitting in front of the altar or behind the altar in black robes, the place with high ceilings. Everybody has to be quiet and stand up when it comes in and what have you. I mean, there's this whole reverence that's given to us about the state. And they convince the masses that we're nothing but animals who would be actually killing ourselves in the street if the police were not there to keep it from happening. And our history shows us that that's when you die, when the police get there. So anyway, we have this respect for the state. Now, I think that we saw a real deterioration in respect for the state that just happened in Milwaukee last night, where the police killed, I think he was 22 or 23 years old. They said he was running away when the police killed him. And then, of course, they discovered after they had killed him that he had a gun, they said. And it doesn't matter if he had a gun or not. I'm just saying that they lie often when they say that. But if you live in America in 2016 and you're black and you don't have a gun, something wrong with you. So they said that he had a gun. And someone was telling me that they saw, I think, a posting on Facebook by somebody who said that they were there when it happened, and how the police had fired into the crowd and the people fired back, and said that the people drove the police out with gunfire, drove them out of the community. Barricades have been set up in various places in Milwaukee. It looked like a real serious kind of confrontation, and clearly the resistance is deepening, and it's going, it's taking real important leaps right now, real important leaps. And Sister Betty, you want to, yeah.
I don't want to make this statement question to you, but as we are organizing in our communities, you know that the Black church is encouraging if you really want to stop the self-hate, which is what this is, then adopt a public school and take the schools back, because that's where the gangs originate. I'm very concerned about this, the only thing that's protecting us in some of these inner cities, unfortunately, is the gangs with their guns, because they're unpredictable and the police are afraid of them. As a former high school principal, I can tell you they fear this group with guns, and that the minute they feel they have taken every last one of those kids' guns, it's open season for all of us. And I just want to throw that out to the group, and I want you to think about it. I'm not telling you something I think, I'm telling you something based on my expertise as a principal. Okay, we need to deal with those kids. We need to have a position of community control over what public schools are left. We've got to take back those schools, and we've got to be the ones to do it. And we've got to address the Black church.
They take a revolutionary politic to the masses of people. The big issue that we're confronted with, or one of them, is that while everybody is talking about mobilizing, nobody's talking about organizing. There's no organizing going on. People just calling rallies and stuff like that. And the people we have to take revolutionary consciousness and organization to masses of people. And I think that if I were a religious person, I would one thing I would want to do is also community control of the churches, because you know, I mean, those lick-spilled Negroes up there. I mean, I think one of the worst things, they ain't lost them. I think that's a real issue, and I think that that makes good news. And what's his name? Is it Tim? What's his name? The Negro news guy. Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo. They get some coverage in Fox News as to how the black preachers are saying this and that. But I don't think the black preachers got influence worth a damn to anybody who is out there with a gun, who is willing to. I don't think. And I've seen in some cities where the preachers have got phone calls 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to tell them to shut up. And their unwillingness to meet Jesus at the time has convinced them that that's what they should do. So, you know, I don't think, but I do believe that this whole notion of these guys becoming sacrosanct because they are preachers, you know, I mean, I know how that works. The sun is hot and I is tired. I think I has been called to preach. You know, it's a good hustle, you know, and all these Negroes are hustlers. I don't want to go there. But I want to thank you, Ralph, for that report, and I want to see what we can do to support your blog, and also to do what we can to reach out. If you would email me Sundiata's information. Email me Sundiata's information. So what I would like to do now is ask Comrade Vice Chair Lisa Davis to report from the Health Working Group, please. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Black is back. Black is back. God damn, Black is back. Before starting with this report, I thought, just based on what I heard the chairman talking about this morning about the foundations who are really, you know, want to reach out to help our community. And I read about this real moving story, you know, a real bowel-moving story by the Ford Foundation about why Black Lives Matter to the philanthropic community. And I put that out on the Black is Back Facebook page. And I don't know how many of you have heard of this, the Living Cities Initiative. Have you heard of that? Well, I strongly suggest that you look into that as well. You go to www.livingcities.org, and they are this group of these wonderful, quote unquote, humanitarian corporate organizations who decided in the early 90s that they were going to reach out to urban America to live better. JP Morgan Chase, the Ford Foundation, Bank of America, all of these organizations and the initiatives that they were going to be putting into place to help the schools, to help us with our homes and all of that. And these are now the same foundations that want to help the Black Lives Matter movement. So I just thought you guys would want to know this warming, moving, bowel-wrenching story. So now to the report. I want to first of all, as always, start out paying homage to my ancestors, and especially my mother and my father. Just real briefly, I haven't told many people this, but my father had been a police officer. He was forced to retire early when I was a little girl. But the things that he told me always stayed in my mind. He told me that a man running away from you is never a threat. He bragged about how he never had to use his gun. And in 1975, in this all-Black community of East Orange, New Jersey, when this young man, young teenager, Derek Humphrey, who was an Olympic hopeful and an honor student, when he was murdered by an officer in East Orange, New Jersey, this white officer in this all-black community. He put a gun point blank to his head and blew his brains out over some kind of traffic thing or whatever. My father had come home and he told me that he was ashamed to say that he was ever a police officer. And my mother did she made tremendous contributions in the field of home health care. And watching her, she never talked about medicine so much. To her, the most important thing that you could do for anybody was about nurturing and creating an environment and touch and just showing your genuine heart and your genuine love. And I just find that interesting that I'm speaking here today, having been brought into this movement, very involved in this movement as a result of police brutality, and also standing up here as the chair of the healthcare working group. So I know very much that those are the seeds of my parents. And it's my father's voice, always, that I've always heard first and foremost whenever I would hear these issues of police brutality, and the seeds that he planted in me from when I was a little girl. Also, I want to take a moment to recognize a tremendous person in the field of health who has recently transitioned. Some of you may have heard of him. His name is Dr. Sebi. And I think it's important to recognize him for a couple of reasons. I had heard about him a long time ago. I was hearing things that he was curing AIDS and all these kind of things. And some people might think that that sounds a little bit like a rumor, but I'll just put it to you like this. What kind of rumors like that do you ever hear about what they call traditional medicine? You don't hear any rumors about them curing anything. What they say, the old wives' tale that has developed about what they call modern medicine is, you know, the cure is worse than the disease, and you don't want to go in them hospitals, they'll kill you. But you will hear what some people might consider these old wives' tales around humane medicine and alternative and natural remedies. And so Dr. Sebi was of that order. He was a tremendous force. And he recently died. I say he was murdered. I found out that he was in Honduras. He was in police custody in Honduras. And somehow he dies of pneumonia, supposedly. And what was more shocking to me about hearing that he was dead was that I don't think a lot of people knew that he was locked up. And I know that he had a tremendous following. And I just remember saying when I heard about that he had been locked up, why wasn't there a call? Why didn't this word get out to the community? And I just think it shows the importance of how we must really integrate the various things that we are involved in, because our survival relies on what we do here in these rooms, not on this ruthless system. And anything that's happening with any one of us, especially people who are somehow involved in the movement for liberation, whether it be in the medical field or the so-called justice system or whatever, we have to be integrated. We have to really realize that we have to rely on each other. I know of people involved in the movement, fighting against police brutality and all of that. They get sick, they just go into the hospital. You don't even hear about them going in there. But you hear about them when they don't come out. So we really have to close that gap and really have to understand the importance, because with all due respect to everybody who knew Dr. Sebi closely, I didn't know him, and I'm not saying anything negative about it, but I really do wish that we would have known that he was at least locked up. We could have begun to put out some kind of call and began organizing. Can't guarantee the outcomes, but certainly that should have happened. Just a few other things that I heard yesterday. I happened to read a report about prostate cancer and how Black men die at twice the rate of prostate cancer than white men. And now the sister statistics that I've heard about that in terms of Black women is that Black women, although white women at one time got breast cancer at higher rates than Black women died faster and at higher rates from breast cancer than white women. And you will see that these kind of statistics just exist in every aspect of healthcare. In fact, they exist in every aspect of everything in this society, that Black people have the worst outcomes no matter what we're talking about. But it does not exist by coincidence. There's not some gene in Black people that somehow makes us not be able to live when we're, in police custody, or that when we get into these hospitals, there's something about us that makes us just die faster. There's nothing about our genes that somehow makes us more attractive to wanting to just be in prison and locked up forever. This is by design. And this is how we must look at this so-called medical profession. Brother Chairman has talked about a few times, I've heard him mention in terms of how the healthcare working group was established. And he talked about how when we were in Newark, New Jersey several years back, and how we were having this conference and they would talk about working groups, and I didn't see anything pertaining to healthcare. And so I had said, there needs to be something with healthcare. And I just want to clear up one thing, Chairman. I wasn't asking to be the chair of the healthcare working group. I wasn't saying, please make me the chair. But that's how he goes, you want to chair it? You want to head it up? And I was like, huh? And I said, well, okay. But that's how it happens. That just goes to speak to the positivity of the Black is Back coalition. But the reason, one of the motivations behind the healthcare working group had to do with this brother who was just such a strong force in the movement. I miss him greatly. We were very good friends. His name is Darrell Graham, and he was just a soldier on the front line of almost everything, but specifically, he was very, very concerned about what was going on in the streets with the horizontal violence in our community. And I mean, he put his heart out there, and he had become very sick. He had a lot of health issues. He had, suffered issues with weight, and I just want to share this with you just to show what his condition was when he really took sick. And I used to always talk with him about the natural modalities I had learned about. But at one point, he just became so ill, and he was in the hospital. I wasn't even aware of everything that was wrong with him, but I could hear in his voice, it sounded to me like they were over-medicating him. And when I had the chance to go see him, he was in a coma. I didn't even realize that he was in a coma at that time, but he was in a comatose state. He was talking out of his head, and I could just really look at him and see that, my gosh, this brother, it looks like he's about to be leaving us soon if we don't do something. And so I had decided, because I know to do certain things very non-invasively and to work with people, and I know how to do it in such a way where it does not step on the families. And I always like to work with them through their families and stuff when I can. But in this particular case, I didn't know his family and I wasn't running into them. But I decided, I just got to go and do what I know to do, these very non-invasive modalities. And that's what I began to do. And when I went one night, I met another person there who I didn't know, but she also knew about these modalities with the Reiki and all of that. And she was good friends of Darrell Graham. And she said to me, I'm here to do energy work on him. And I said, so am I. I said, maybe we can do something together. I don't want to interfere with you. She goes, let's go for it. And we just started working on him, very natural, light things. And the next thing I know, he's moving and raising his hands. And we didn't even know he was in a coma. And they come running into the room, Mr. Graham, wake up, wake up, wake up. And I'm like, something's going on. But he took it as a good thing that he was moving. And then the next day when I would check on him, I'd hear that he was doing pretty good. In fact, when I first went to see him, they had an external pacemaker on him. And the doctor said, we hope we don't have to put that in him. And so I'm just standing there, and he walks out the room, and I just started doing the little things that I knew to do. Came back to see him the next day, and the pacemaker was gone. Anyway, to make a long story short, and I would say within a week's time, and also just one other thing had also happened with him. They said he was going to need dialysis. And I, went to see him again. And in the meantime, he's getting better and better. We're hearing great news about him. And I went to see him again and did a little something I knew to work with. And the next thing I know, he's calling me up and saying that he no longer needs dialysis. All of this happened within a week's time. Within a week's time. And on days I couldn't go to the hospital, my friend, she would go and she would be calling me up. And we had, not deliberately, but we had sort of created a circle. And when we couldn't go, there would be other people that I could talk to, and that we could take notes and say this was going on and that was going on, but we had somebody around him. And he walked out of that hospital, it looked like he had been in Club Med. everybody was looking at him like they could not believe it, because the word we were initially getting was that it looked like he was on his way out. And 6 months later, unfortunately, he did succumb. And my feeling is he wasn't doing some of the things that we had recommended that he do. And it just speaks to the need of this kind of work and how we have to really work with changing things. But that became the inspiration behind the healthcare working group, because we had developed something that I wanted to see mimicked. I feel that there's no way any one of us should ever go into them hospitals or anything like that without letting people know. And I also feel that those of us who do know certain things about natural modalities, natural non-invasive things like holding somebody's hand or massaging them with oil, we should make that a part of our activism, so that when we see these people who have given their lives for the movement, and we know that they're not feeling well, and especially if they are in these institutions, we should try to, be there with support for the family and stuff like that. And that has been a part of what the healthcare working group has done. Ilambe Braff, some of you may have heard of him, but I was very appreciative that his family, his son, allowed me to go visit him so that we could sort of help to take the burden off the family and just do certain things that we knew to do. When Larry Ham was in the hospital, when he had this accident, I was there to the extent that I could be, and we would not just go one time, but repeatedly. And I learned that when going repeatedly to see somebody, you could observe certain patterns. You could tell, oh, they were doing good today, but they're not doing good this day. And what's happened? Maybe there could be something going on with the medicine. But anyway, this is one of the directions that I think is very important to take the healthcare working group in, and not just with people who have names that are known in the organization, but even with our family members. But certainly, we should try to really be there for, the people in the Black liberation struggle. I just want to talk about some of the campaigns that we have worked on, because I can certainly tell you this, since the healthcare working group was formed, and I wasn't even expecting this, but we have had things brought to us. And when it is dealing with medicine and somebody being sick, it is so timely. And one of the first things brought to us, to our door, and I said something about this yesterday, but the case of baby Dylan, which happened in Philadelphia. And one of the things we must realize that goes on, and this is another reason why we have to really pay attention to family, because there have been times if the parents disagree with some kind of garbage or some kind of poison that they want to inject into their children, they will take the children. I mean, this is such madness. They will recommend jacking somebody up with these so-called modalities that don't work, that have all these horrible side effects, and then they will look at the parent like they're crazy if they say, I don't want my child to go through that. I want to try something more natural. So what happened in the case of baby Dylan, they just took the baby. Immediately, the baby was born to a mother who had sickle cell anemia. From what I understand, she was under a doctor's care outside of the state, but she was visiting in Philadelphia when she went into labor. And they just took the baby. They put out an Amber Alert warning. Like I said, Brother Diop was one who told me about this. And they began to jack this baby up with morphine. And so we had to get moving. I was very glad that we had the healthcare working group. And that's what we did. We were organizing. We developed phone campaigns. We had people organizing in Philadelphia outside of the hospital every single day. We were trying to come up with something to put pressure on them and to let them know. And I really wanted, the family members of baby Dylan to understand they had an organization out here that would support them, especially when dealing with these issues. And luckily, they did release the baby to the family. Another case that we worked on, Jahai McMath, not long after that, when in California, Oakland, California, they decided that they were the hospital pronounced this young girl brain dead who had went into the hospital for a tonsillectomy, and they were saying, take her off life support. We're not going to give her any more time, against the family's wishes. Now, people might have different things about what they feel about whether the brain can heal. I happen to know that it can, so I don't personally accept that. But the biggest issue here to the Healthcare Working Group and to the Black is Back Coalition is that it should not be some freaking doctor who doesn't even care about you who decides that they're going to take you off life support. That should be the decision of the family. It should be them to make that decision, not the ruthless hospital to do that. And again, we had the issue of time. They were moving every single day. And I remembered I had contacted the chairman because that was in Oakland, California. I mean, I didn't know anybody in Oakland or to get out there to do anything. And through the Black is Back Coalition, we were able to organize. Our brother chairman put me in touch with some of our comrades on the ground in Oakland, and we were reaching out and talking and organizing, and they reached out to some of the family members. We just wanted to let them know that we were here to help support. They helped to participate in demonstrations against the hospital. And in the meantime, we were on our end writing letters, trying to send letters to the attorneys, to the people involved with making this decision. And I know that at some point that the mother was able to bring her daughter out of Oakland and to try to get help for her other places. In fact, I hear that she's in the Northeast. I heard something else very sad about this that I would like the Healthcare Working Group to also work on. But because they declared her brain dead, they declared her dead, if they take her back to Oakland, because the mother's family is in Oakland, California, and she needs family support. But if she brings her daughter back there, she can't get any support for her daughter because the state of California or the hospitals declared her dead, and she is not dead. She's alive. So that's an issue we want to work on. Another issue that we took on, the issue of Depo-Provera. We have literature sheets that we made up within the Healthcare Working Group. This issue of Depo-Provera, it is so important. This is about the issue of how they push deadly birth control methods. I don't call it birth control, I call it population control because it is outrageous. And Depo-Provera is the most deadly form of birth control that they have been pushing in our community. And they push to us, European women worldwide are something like 0.07% of its users. African women worldwide are about good 90% of its users. There are so many deadly side effects with this drug that they push, but one of the deadliest side effects of it is that it increases a person's chance of getting AIDS. It doubles, triples their chances, not just of getting AIDS, but of also transmitting it. So it is a threat to the young men as well. And they have been targeting our communities with this. And I remembered when I first heard about the AIDS epidemic in relation to Africa, this was like in the 80s, and Time magazine had something on the cover of the magazine talking about how these women in Nigeria who were engaging in very, very risky sexual activities, how they were not getting AIDS. They couldn't understand that. And then the next thing I know, I hear about the AIDS epidemic in Africa and how AIDS is on the rise in the African community here and all of that. Well, just from some of the studies I have been doing, there's a correlation between the rise of AIDS and the promotion of Depo-Provera in our communities. So we have like a fact sheet or flyers that we made up on the table. Please take this and look at it. And not only do we talk about, Depo-Provera, deadly birth control, but we talk about some of the more natural, safer methods of birth control, like one method which I'd never heard of, the symptothermal method. How many women here have heard of the symptothermal method of birth control, or anybody? I don't see no hands going up. But there is something called the symptothermal method, which uses various very safe forms of birth control. And from what I understand, when used correctly, it can be the most effective form. But you won't hear any organization like Planned Parenthood telling you about that. And our position is that people have the right to know and to be informed. So again, and especially to the younger generation and the younger sisters, this is a campaign that we really need people to help work with. And this is primarily getting these flyers out. We have information on the Black is Back website about the issues of Depo-Provera and getting this information out, and also about the issues of safe birth controls. We also began to do work and studies about lead. We've all been hearing about lead and what's going on in our communities. And there's a whole lot more that we have to do, but we put out an information fact sheet about lead, about various resources that are out there. I want to encourage everybody to look at that. But one of the things that they should also realize in terms of lead, and we also talk about some environmental concerns as part of our platform, but when they put these things in our community, it's not like, oh gosh, they just put it there and it has no effect on us. These kind of chemicals can have profound effects on our neurological systems. And we have to understand that, lead being one of them, and lead has shown an association with an increase in violent crime throughout the 50 or 60 years that they have been, using it for everything. And there's a whole lot of research and everything to go on. And I don't present this as a causative factor of the issue with violence, and not to say that the way that this system is set up and the economics of what's going on, not to say that that is not a factor, but we should really understand from the ground floor all of the forces that they have in play against our communities, because you will find that lead is more concentrated in the Black community and in the people who are Black and brown than any other community. And they've been knowing about this. And in the 1970s, when they banned lead paint, they didn't clean it up. They left it in these environments, and it has detrimental effects. Another thing that we put out, I just want to make people aware of some of these, the information, is that I don't just like to talk about the issue with what's going on with the medications, or even with lead and stuff like that. We have information out there about phytoremediation and other kinds of very natural things, plants and things of that nature, that we can begin to use in our own environment. There are so many things that we can do, at least on the health front, that can make significant differences, but we have to psychologically break from that system. So again, we have literature on the Black is Back table. Please look at that. And in fact, NASA did a study, I think this was in the 80s or in the 90s, I just learned about this, where they looked at houseplants to change the environment, to change the air quality of where people live. And they did that in studying, the astronauts when they would go up in space. And they published this. Talk about these plants that could help to clean up and provide more oxygen in the air and all of that. This comes from NASA saying this. And yet, they didn't make that wide known, but we need to understand that this information exists. We put some information out there about that. Also, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of healthcare. We have a Facebook website, and it's called Black is Back, Health for the Revolution. And we deliberately wanted to get that phrase in there, health for the revolution, because while it's important that we have access to health care, affordable health care, we have to really define what we mean by health care. And we can give our lives in the movement, but we do better with the movement when we're alive than when we're dead. So we have to really understand we owe a responsibility to each other. It's not just about our own individual lives. I owe a responsibility to everybody here to try to keep myself as healthy and as politically sharp as I can, because we have to be there for each other. And we know when people in the movement go, there's just such a vast hole, because we don't have a lot of people stepping up to do the work. And just a few other things I wanted to make you aware of that we're working on. We published, also put together, a fact sheet of flyers with just certain things that we can do, like talk about the importance of certain herbs that you can begin to add in your food. And another thing, liquid chlorophyll. These are minor changes that we can begin to make in our own health that can have significant impact. Another issue that we began to take up was the issue of human trafficking. You saw that we did reports about violence against African women, but we know it's basically against our community. But the issue of human trafficking is something that people need to become much more aware of. The United States claims that they're doing something about human trafficking, which is basically involves labor trafficking, but also sex trafficking, and they're kidnapping people from all over the world and in this country. I understand it happens right under our noses, right in front of our eyes, and we don't even recognize it. But the United States claims that they're doing all this stuff about it, yet I see no signs anywhere anywhere stating that if you're a runaway, what you can do, who you can call, or anything like that. And I'm in the train stations all the time in New York. I just see information about how they'll arrest you if you just sit in their waiting room for too long, for more than 2 hours. You can be thrown out the station and arrested. And how if you don't have a ticket, they can come after you, and how you have to have ID on you at all times. But I see nothing about any of these other things. And so another thing that we did, we published a report, we put it on the healthcare working group website of the Black is Back organization. And this is a report about mammograms. And as a woman, I reserve the right to say that I don't believe in the mammograms. I will not get one, nor will I ever get a mammogram. And this is based on science. And we put together this report that really references so many of the studies that are coming from traditional, modern medical sources like the New England Journal of Medicine and all these sources worldwide. They've got over 25, 30 years of research that they've done on the mammogram. And basically so much of what's coming from the traditional resources, traditional medical publications are that the mammogram is not living up to its name. They don't really have good statistics about its usage. I've seen information from radiologists' reports about the mammogram, because mammogram, no matter how you shape it or form it, it puts radiation into your body and you are continuously exposed to it. So please make use of that report. We have it on our website. Please look at it. And that's about what we've been doing with the healthcare worker. But one other thing we're going to take on is the issue of Marion Sims, who is considered the father of modern day gynecology. He owned slaves. He experimented on Black women repeatedly, not just Black women, but children as well, without giving them any anesthesia. And yet he's called the father of modern day gynecology, and they've got his statues up in Central Park and all of that. We want them statues down. So, thank you.
I want to for that report and for really being on the case, because as poor health is, it's not something that's on the agenda most times, certainly political agendas. And I really appreciate the fact that, as Sister Lisa said, the first, that's what, and we haven't been able to shut her up since. But I want to say that part of what is revealed in this process is that the question of health and wellness is a political question. It's not, and it's a political question that revolves around the fact that we live in a country and a world where profit motive is a driving factor. And they don't create hospitals to cure or heal anybody. They don't even have medical care, if they want to call it that, to cure and heal anybody. Everything is driven by profit. That's what capitalism is. So, and if you don't believe it, take your sick self to some local health center and try to get some help. And if you don't have any money, or if you are not someone who is participating in this scam they call Obamacare, which is nothing but a boon, a major boon, subsidized by the people for the insurance corporations, there's nothing, there's no incentive even in this kind of system to help anybody. You take a tiny island like Cuba that sent more than 20,000 doctors. It's a tiny, poor country like Cuba that sent more than 20,000 doctors into Venezuela, and to work in the poor sectors of the community where healthcare is free. And Cuba that says that if we got children who we want to be doctors, send them to Cuba, and they'll make doctors of them, and that are not trapped by these modalities that affects us in a certain way. I mean, right now you have a factory process where a doctor spends no more than this amount of time with you and just move you through a process, uncaring. And the relationship is with insurance companies and the relationship with these corporations, but not with the person who is supposed to be a patient. Yeah.
One other thing about insurance, but I personally have refused medical insurance because I know this much, that when you have this insurance, and they see that you have this insurance, and you have to go into that hospital, they are going to really jack you up. I know it's like how they see coming in the house, I ain't got no insurance, they're gonna give me an aspirin and say, she's still and get me out of it, which is what I want. But if you have it, but this is something very serious that we have to be aware of in terms of how it's used. You know, if you talk about insurance, and yet what they're doing for you is killing you, they're going to really move on you. And I've seen them do that to people. So I have personally just want to bring that up about insurance. I've refused it.
It's a capitalist system. And I think that hopefully this is one of the things that we continue to expose through the coalition work, is that there is a basis for what we continue to be confronted with, and it is the nature of the damn social system itself and the relationship that we have with the social system. So I want to appreciate, thank you, Ralph, and thank you, Sister Lisa, and also Sister Lisa, thank you for reminding us of this process that the so-called wonderful philanthropic organizations have been providing for us. I am a part of an organization that believes that if Soros and the Ford Foundation believe so much in what they say, then they should be in the leadership of paying reparations. And that's what we're doing. We got an organization. We're gonna be saying, you know, we have an organized campaign that we're initiating to get reparations. One of them from Ford, one of them from Soros, one of them from Clinton. Reparations. Give us reparations. We'll take care of the rest of it. Just give us the, you know, the stolen value that you've taken from us over this period of time. That helps to change the narrative considerably. That helps to show what side Soros and the Ford Foundation really are on. What I would like to do now is to ask, I guess we should try and do another call. Ghazi, are you prepared just to do another? Can we combine the, Osenu, there was some discussion about a resource call. How many people in here now are not members of the coalition? Okay. How many organizations are represented here that are not part of the coalition? Organizations. Oh, right on. I'd like to make a call for you to join this organization. By virtue of joining the coalition, you automatically, as an organization, you automatically become a part of the steering committee. And the steering committee is that entity that, you know, actually makes the determinations about what's been happening here over the weekend, the agenda that we are promoting and building. And the steering committee, being on the steering committee as a part of the coalition, is something that allows you to extend your reach beyond the local community where you are based and to all the other places that the coalition, where the coalition is located. I really would like to call on you to join this coalition. And I think for local organizations, there's a membership fee of how much? Somebody said quickly. For a local organization. The reason $50 for a local organization, and for a statewide organization, it's what, like $100, is it? Is that right? I can't hear you. 50 for local and a state organization, and for a national organization, it's $150, and for an international organization, $200. So is there an organization present, a representative organization present, who feel like you can become a part of the coalition, that you need to become a part of this organization? Uhuru. Where are you coming from, brother? Okay. Okay, so this brother Muteba, you can talk to brother Muteba. He was, oh, there he is, right here, right behind you. Yeah, and is there any other organization? Okay. What about individuals? Individuals can join this organization for a membership fee of $25 a year. And we really would like for individuals to join the organization and to work in one of the working groups that we're talking about. Are there any individuals here who are interested in joining the Black is Back Coalition? All right. So where's that? Oh, right on. All right. Splendid, splendid. That's out of Huntsville. Muteba is another sister. Out of Huntsville. She wants to join as an individual. And so I want to thank you for that. And I'm also obligated, brothers and sisters and comrades, to hit you up for some money. Because the way we talk about Soros and the Ford Foundation, they ain't gonna give us nothing. And we're gonna have to do this on our own. So what I'd like to do now is to see if, in fact, we can get any contributions here for the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations. Is there anyone who wants to make any contributions to the organization? Oh, Uhuru, what's your name? Yeah. Ruby. Ruby, how much you gonna do to take us out of this deficit? Actually, how much? $200. What the hell? Here I am starting by asking nothing, and somebody wants to make $200. Maybe I should have started up there. Anybody want to match Ruby? Anybody want to match Ruby? It's only $200. Two people, 100 each would match Ruby. Anybody want to make 100 on your own? Is there a $100 donation in the house? What about 50? Is there a $50 donation in the house? Ruby is going to end up floating this organization. Is there a $25 contribution in the house? Anybody? Oh, 25. You give another 30. All right, splendid. And then there's 25. Is there anything between the 50 and the 25 that I asked for? So we got two 25s plus 5. Is there anybody else, $25 in the house? Is there anybody else with any contribution at all? Anything? Raise your hand and let us applaud. Who did? All right, another $25. Right on. Is that it, comrades, brothers and sisters? All right, I want to thank you. I want Chimarenga, if you will, to come up, please. Chimarenga is the one who's been talking to us about the protocols and how we get from here to Washington, D.C. in November 5th and 6th. And what Chimarenga is going to do is just talk to us a little bit about some of the protocols. Remember, leaving here, part of what we are responsible for doing is going back to the states where we are located and begin to organize state conventions to share the excitement that we have for the draft, for the declaration, the National Black Political Agenda that we have established here. That's what our work is going to revolve around. And in these states, we have a responsibility to have conventions which will, again, take this declaration to as many people in that state as possible. It will also have the responsibility of organizing people in that state to spread the word further, perhaps farther, and then to get people from that state to Washington, D.C. So I want to just, Chimarenga, I know there's some things that forms and wonder about what people do in the state, that kind of stuff. This will be brief. I'm not going to hold you much longer.
Uhuru. Yeah, I spoke yesterday, and I just want to kind of go back over it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Just want to tell you about the 3 phases that we were talking about on yesterday in terms of the convention getting to the national convention in Washington, D.C. And also just want to remind people that we have forms that once you do your state conventions, you can fill out that form to send in a report. So that first phase that we talked about was the declaration, where the declaration would be discussed at the preparatory conference. That's the conference that you're attending right now. And the process that we are looking at going beyond today, yesterday and today, is the state conventions. The National Steering Committee of the Black is Back Coalition is appointing state conveners who will have the responsibility for building these state conventions. You heard one brother yesterday, Khalid from Pittsburgh, talking about possibility of building a state convention in Pennsylvania. So the state conventions will be state to state. There'll be one state convener, but they will be working with a committee of people, secretary, chair, secretary, treasurer, outreach coordinator, membership coordinator. So we want to make sure that, like what the brother was talking about yesterday, uniformity, that we have these committees in place that can build the state conventions. And one of the most important things the state convention will do, aside from actually mobilizing a bigger group of people to discuss the declaration, is to get people to the national convention in November. Mobilize people to the national convention in November based on the discussions of the declaration that you heard on yesterday, that was accepted and adopted on yesterday, and then get that contingent of people from your state, 25, 30, 50, as big as you can get. I know some of the state conventions are not going to be as big as others, but the objective would be to get the biggest contingent you can, who has now been educated around the declaration, to the national convention in November. So again, we have forms for people to fill out. Once you complete your state convention, you fill out that form, do your report, say this is how many people attended, this is how many people we attend to bring to Washington, D.C. So in summary, that's what we're trying to do. And if you're interested in being a state convener, you haven't been approached by the Black is Back Coalition, make your intentions known that you're really interested in organizing in your state and being a state convener. You can talk to Mateba about that. You can talk to myself. I'll pass that information along to Mateba. And we're certainly going to be trying to get people details and technical help, like the brother was talking about yesterday, about how these things can be uniform in all the state conventions. Uhuru.
Is there anything that we wanted to raise with Comrade Chimaringa? I hope that we hear this understanding how dynamic a state convention can be and how dynamic the convention that we're going to do. We're calling the 2 days in Washington, D.C. on November 5th and 6th, that's the convention. It's not just a place where we go and just listen to speeches like what you saw with the Democratic and Republican parties. This is something that we want to open up to masses of people. Our convention is going to include the mobilization, the rally that we have on Saturday, the 5th, at Malcolm X Park. Our convention will include, our convention is going to march on the White House. That's what our convention is going to do. And our convention is going to make every effort so that all these Africans who are being victimized by our circumstances as a colonized people in this country will have a podium. You don't just have to have somebody who's there, your senator speaking for you. You come and speak for yourself. You stand on that platform. You march down the street with your banners and your placards, talking about how you've been wounded. You do for yourself an organization the Republicans cannot do and will not do. This is what it is that we have to make happen. It can be a very dynamic process. So we're talking about, yeah, we're taking this to the state. In Alabama, in Texas, in Washington, D.C., in Florida, and Missouri, and New York, and various other places, we're taking this. And we want to present this declaration to everybody that's there. But even in those circumstances, people will have an opportunity to talk about how this thing impacts on their lives as African people, because we're the ones being victimized, but we have no voice. So we become our own voice in this organized process. So how many people we were at in St. Louis just a couple of months ago at a meeting, and this woman whose daughter was murdered on March 31st in St. Petersburg, Florida by the Pinellas County Sheriff Department. She was 16 years old. She was with two other 15-year-old girls in a car. And the Sheriff Department chased the car in violation of their own no chase policy and chased them into a cemetery where they pushed them into a pond. And the three girls, and there's videotapes of this, after the police had talked about they'd courageously, at risk of their own lives, rushed to try to save the drowning girls. Then this video is released showing that while the girls were drowning, here the sheriff's guys, the deputies are standing around having a discussion about it. Oh, I hear them screaming. Can you hear them screaming? Oh, well, they're done now. This is the sheriff's department. Anybody see this thing that was on TV, the news now about where there's a flood? And somebody rushes in, they break the glass in the window and drag the white woman out of the water. And the white woman says, my dog, my dog. And then they go back and get the dog. You have these guys talking about they're done. They're drowning. These are the sheriff's deputies. So they kill those girls. They pushed them into the water. And the way we know they did it, if no other evidence is important to anybody, is because the guy in the lead car, the sheriff's deputy, whose name was Howard Skaggs, killed an 18-year-old black boy in 2006 and drowned him, pushed him, took him to the water. The boy is trying to get away, a small guy, about 145 pounds. He jumps in the water trying to get away from them. They sick the dog on the boy while he's in the water. And then the cop jumps into the water and they proceed to drown the boy. And then after they kill the boy, they say, well, what happened was that he was attacking the dog, and the reason we jumped into the water was to save the dog from the boy. right? And so now the boy is dead. And Howard Skaggs, the same cop who was involved in murdering these 3 girls, was involved in that. And he testified that the reason he jumped in the water then was to save the dog. But they let these 3 girls die. But I heard her speak in St. Louis just a couple of months ago. And her, you know, she talked about, I heard the sister yesterday saying how the police came to her and told her that her son was dead. Well, with this sister, whose name was at the time Yashika Clemens, with this sister, 10, 15 cops come to her on her job. And 10, 15 cops. She is a manager at Taco Bell's. Ask her, how many children you got? Well, what are their names? Well, where are they? You have a daughter? Where is she? How does she look? Does she have any identifying? And by now, the woman is freaking out. What in the hell is going on? And she said, why are you asking me all these questions? And then the cop said, she's dead. That's it. She's dead. And I heard her speak. She's not one of those 3 girls, by the way, are more than likely not counted as the number of people who the police have killed in this country. You understand what I'm saying? So when you talk about all the people they've killed, and you come up with these numbers, those 3 girls are not counted. And I heard her speak in a meeting in St. Louis. And after she spoke, a woman stood up and she said, the police killed my son 2 years ago. And I've never had the courage to come out and say anything about it until I heard you say something. And this is the kind of stuff that's happening every day. And it's happening because African people don't have our own capacity to do anything about it, or we don't assume we do. Hillary isn't going to say anything about it unless it somehow is going to get her a vote. And she's now they're doing these horrible things with these people who they've killed. You've got whose families. You've got people, poor people who've never been anything in their lives until now. Their son has died, their daughter has died, their cousin has been killed, and they're elevated to this star status. And they've got these vulturistic lawyers, these Negro lawyers who you can't find when you're trying to fight a case around what is happening to us in our community around democratic rights. These vultures who are right there, you see the same ones every damn time all over the country, the same ones who tell the people don't have anything to do with any kind of movements or anything else, and always say that you don't think all the cops are bad, just some bad apples and this kind of stuff. Have anybody, but now this is our own convention, and it's important for us to bring everybody there who can tell their story, tell their stories in the state conventions, and then participate in this demonstration. We're not going to attack the White House yet, but what we are going to say is march on it and be pissed off and take your anger and take your understanding of this. Trump is right, it's rigged. But, you know, they have mobilized the people, and people have to have this opportunity to speak their grievances. And that's what this coalition is offering them to do with our own convention. So part of the convention is the rally. Come to the rally and tell everybody in the world who is there to hear what your story is. And march on the White House and carry your banners and carry the photos and pictures of the people who have been killed by the police, people who are jailed by the police. And don't be ashamed, because this is one of the things they want to do, is shame us because our children are in jail, like they lock themselves up. Shame us, you know, with this whole notion that we are criminals. Let me tell you this, because I get tired of it. I hear, you know, yes, they killed him and he was just turning his life around. What the hell are you talking about? What is he doing turning his life around? Did he learn to lock and load? Can he strip and reassemble it with blindfolded? Is that what you mean when you say he's turning his life around? What the hell are you talking about? Because we are on the defensive. There's something wrong with us, and so we always have to prove that we really were repairing ourselves, boss. We doing, et cetera. This is what we supposed to do. And I was in a press conference and some reporter asked me, don't I have any concern about hold the families responsible? We're talking about the police murdered these 3 girls, 2 15s and 1 16 years old. And the reporter, this white reporter asked me, well, don't you hold the families responsible? I said, yes, we hold the families responsible. We hold the sheriff's mama responsible. We hold the sheriff deputies, they're responsible. All of them are responsible, and we're not going to carry that baggage, that weight. You're going to kidnap me. And then they're going to say the girls might have stolen a car. They can't say, and they say they might have stolen a car. There's a 35-year-old man who allegedly was giving them a ride somewhere and parked at a Walmart to buy a television, at a Walmart that doesn't even sell televisions. And then when he came out, he left his key in the car. When he came out, the car was gone. So that's his story. 2 15 years old and 1 16-year-old girl. Wow, that was going to be some damn television that he was buying. And so nobody's even talking about this guy. Sister Lisa was talking about sex trafficking. Florida is one of the highest places of incidents of sex trafficking you'll find in this country. I don't know why they were in the car with the guy, but I know this. Here you're going to charge them with car theft when they're stolen themselves. And the situation, this woman, who they want to make a bad parent, she works 12 hours a day. She doesn't have a car. She gets on the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning to travel to another city to work for Taco Bell. She's had a total of 5 children. She has to get those children ready to school, fix them up, take them to school, catch the bus, go to work, and she does this every day and catch the bus back home to take care of her children, and she's a bad parent. So that's the kind of stuff. But we want to have this convention so people like her, so people like folk in our community can have an opportunity to come out and talk. So we don't have to act like these old highfalutin, petty bourgeois, middle-class Negroes who, in fact, this sister's lawyer, the first Negro who was her lawyer, told her that she was going to send her to speech school to give her some speech therapy. Can you imagine that? This is her lawyer. That was her lawyer then. Her lawyer now is standing right there against the wall. So I want to say, yeah, her lawyer now is Brother Aaron, But this is how they think about, the woman's lawyer. And if anybody needs something done with their speech, it's the damn sheriff who told that damn lie about the courageous deputies who leaped into the water to save the girls. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that needs to come to the surface, and people like this sister here and others who've been victimized need to have your own capacity to speak, and that's what this is going to happen. So is there any other thing that needs to be said? And we want to do that also with our convention when we come to Howard University on the 6th. It's going to be a splash party, just like they did with Republicans and the Democratic Party, except we won't be lying. And let the people talk. And we're going to talk our butts off. We're going to talk like hell. We're squealing on America. You understand? Let's talk. This is what it is. And then people can leave that place filled with the confidence that their instincts were right. Because most of us know that we should be able to do something, that something is wrong, and that and it's just your old butt-kissing, boot-licking, vomit-eating preacher that's up there telling you that you can't express your resentment to a system that continues to murder you and that has already determined your children should not have a future. They're talking about those 3 girls who died and that they're bad parenting, etc. And then right now they can make a prediction that it's going to take 228 years for the average black family to accumulate the wealth that the average white family has. And you're going to tell me that's what they have just said, is that all of our children are destined to have no future at all. Because there ain't no way in hell you're going to be able to catch up 228 years. You ain't going to be living long enough to catch up. Do you understand? And we just don't find that satisfying at all. I don't care what Reverend Chickenbone says. I don't give a damn what Reverend Chickenbone said about it. I don't care if it's in the Bible. You understand what I'm saying? If you can find verse and chapter in the Bible saying that we're supposed to do this, bring it to me and I'll burn it. So Chimurenga is going to be working with the steering committee. Our next meeting will not be this Saturday, but Saturday after this one, where we'll pull together everything that's come out of here, the recommendations that have been made throughout this process, to go ahead and move it forward. We're going to come out of here united, and we're going to build an incredible movement that is not only in opposition to nasty direct white power, but it's also in opposition to a lot of other people who are trying to block our progress and to divert the struggle of this movement. So I just want to say that the total amount of money that was raised is $359, and that's because somebody has not given at least $1 that would make it $360. If you want to, we can tolerate uneven numbers, but it needs to be higher than 359. $6 would make it 365, and $11 would make it $370. And I don't count good enough to tell you off the top how much it would take to make it $400. There's something there. Here's more, and there's right here, right on. Yeah. Oh, right on. There's somebody who counts. The person who's taking the money can count too. Oh, Husseino, right on. See, Ruby, you started something. All right, comrade. What are we looking at now, comrade? How much? $38 more? So you're not going to tally that. $38, $369, $370, $89, $100, and $2. So that's $402. That's $403, I think, if I'm correct. What I'd like to do now, brothers and sisters, we're going to escalate this process. I know some people got to get on the road, but I want to ask Comrade Glenn Ford, and Glenn doesn't like this spontaneous stuff. And he's real eloquent and polite in public company, but behind your backs, he's gonna say horrible things to me. But I'd like for Glenn, come up and, just want to go ahead and ask people, some folk from the steering committee to have some closing words. Glenn.
Yeah, I'm gonna have all kind of nasty things to say about you, because I ain't got my script. We are convening this unique project, this convention in November at a very auspicious time, and it may not look like an auspicious political time, but I think it is. We see these Democrats crowding everybody and their mama into this big tent, which is more like a clown car. You remember seeing those skits of marching bands and football teams all crowding into a Volkswagen, disappearing into it. That's what the Democratic National Convention looked like. everybody getting into this clown car. Hillary Clinton believes that she can freak out and stampede in fear of Trump, who she calls a fascist, everybody else but Trump into her tent, run by her, the world's foremost fascist. And this will look to many of us like a big victory for Hillary Clinton and for this Democratic Party. But it's really not, because folk can't do anything in that clown car. It's a shame and a disgrace to be herded into a clown car with the CIA director and the head of the NSA and all of these international cannibals and predators and perverts and the folks who organized the ongoing genocide that's taken 6 million lives in the Congo. All of them are in Hillary's big tent. And this whole Black misleadership class, including Reverend Chicken Bones that Omali was talking about, they're all in this big tent. And it may seem like they're all powerful because they're all in the big tent, but what that really shows our community is that the folks who say that they speak for them are really fraternizing with the enemy in ways that historically we've never seen before. And so when you ask the question, which side are you on? We're the ones who are outside that tent and going to try to burn down that tent. And I think that our conference in November is a step towards burning down that big tent. Now I'm through, brother.
I want to thank you, and there's so much more that has to be said, and we'll be saying it in the days and weeks to come, especially as it relates to this farce that this election season has revealed itself to be, and that the whole electoral process will continue to expose itself to be. That it is a very serious situation for the system itself, because in order for this electoral process to really work effectively, it has to be something that the masses of people believe in. That's the only reason they go through the process of having votes. You don't have anything to do with shaping the agenda for the Democrat or Republican Party. You never have had anything to do. They shape this in smoke-filled rooms. Well, now the bourgeoisie is more health conscious than the most of us, so there might not be that much smoke in the room, you know. But all of this is decided. Every candidate, every presidential candidate, with the possible exception for most of this run of Donald Trump, these campaigns are run by, what do you call these people who employed by corporations to represent themselves? By lobbyists. All of them lobbyists. So when you see Obama opens his mouth, when Hillary opens her mouth, and the others, what they're doing is representing a program, a platform that has been constructed by the rulers of this country, the bourgeoisie. They're nothing but mouthpieces, generally speaking. But they need people to vote for them, because when people vote for them, they can give the appearance of having a popular mandate to carry out the most ruthless, vicious, imperialist schemes imaginable. And they can say, you gave them permission to do it because you voted for them. And even if you didn't vote for them this time, you had an opportunity to vote for them, to vote for somebody else. Now they have a situation where 64% of the people in the country say it's going in the wrong direction. 57% of Trump has a 57% negative polling rate, and Clinton has a 55% negative polling rate. This is an extraordinary situation that they are confronted with. Nobody believes in the country. 64% says going in the wrong direction. Nobody believes in the Democratic Party as it represented by Hillary Clinton. She's got a 55% negative polling rating. You can say Hillary if you want to. That's the Democratic Party representative. And Trump a 57% negative polling. This is the situation that we're looking in and at right now. And this is why it is critically important for all of our forces. Our forces have to be collected, because if you look at this election, they say Hillary has a 55% negative polling rating. That's when you include the people who support her, which 25% of the Democratic base, probably 97% of her support comes from Africans. Extract that and then say, what is her negative rating? Do you understand the question I'm asking? If they were not factoring in that 94% favor part of your vote, that 94% that you represent in terms of supporting her, what would her unfavorable ratings be? If they did not include the 94% opposition that you have to Trump, say 94% of Africans are opposed to Trump, his favorability ratings would go up. It's the Africans, our place in this whole mix, that does not get examined appropriately, and that is something that's offered to the rulers. Now, I know there are a lot of progressive Bernie Sanders supporters. And so what you gonna do now? And that's a real question. What now? And I can tell you what they're gonna do now. What their role is to take the vote to the Democratic Party. Many people who were dissatisfied and would not have looked at the Democratic Party because of Hillary Clinton, where they're gonna go? They're gonna go to the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. There may be some of them, handful will go to Trump, and some of them gonna have a demonstration outside of something that the Democratic Party is doing. And some of them are going to join the Green Party, and the bourgeoisie is doing everything it can to raise up the Libertarian Party to take away votes from Trump. But we really, nobody even talks about us as a factor, just angry people because of the last police killings. Our agenda has to be one that prevails, and it has to be one that they cannot count on controlling. They cannot count on controlling. That's what has to happen. Sister Betty mentioned how the police were terrified of the gangs. The reason they're terrified of the gangs with guns because they don't control it. And Africans with guns that they don't control, they are terrified of, because one day the revolution might get to somebody's brains carrying that gun that they don't control, and somebody might also get some gasoline to burn down the damn tent that we've just been talking about so eloquently. So this is our time. I think we have a huge responsibility if we don't fold ourselves and don't become enamored by the Democrats or what America is going to offer as its next scam. Remember, it can all be better if you hang with America in 228 years. only how many more? Only 228 more years. 220. Give them 200. Get a man a chance. Get a brother a chance. You understand? Give him 228 years. He'll get it straight, right? That's where white people are today, right? That's where you, by then you'll be 228 years more behind. So I don't expect America, state to be here 228 years ago. If it is, everything I've tried to do will have failed any damn way. Yeah, with them, and you're right. Of course, they prepare for that too. They send in rockets to Jupiter, so they can destroy the planet because they don't have to be here. I want to thank everybody. I think we've had a splendid conference. And I'm hoping that everybody is enthusiastic about going back and beginning to build. I know we'll be building from the coordinating committee of the coalition. We'll be building the process moving forward to take us to November. Let's use every vehicle that we have to make that happen. Some of you have access to social media. And you're good at it. And you should report on what has happened in this meeting. and what we have to do going forward, getting to November. November is going to be historical, not for the reason the bourgeoisie thinks, but even the rulers are concerned. The economy is shot to hell. I know that sometimes it's hard to believe because every other day you hear news that things are really perking up, only to hear news every other day that is not as perky as they thought it was. You hear news coming about how the growth rate in this country economically is almost negative. I think they're talking about 1.5, 2% no more growth rate for the economy. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. And not only is that true here, but it's true throughout most of Europe. And I mention Europe and here in particular because that's where the headquarters of the capitalist economy are located. So they don't have a good future, and they are fretting and in a state of panic. You're scrambling, attacking what they call immigrants, and doing all kinds of things to try to hold it together and trying to win you to participate with them in holding it together. So our mission is different. We are going to have a magnificent mobilization, magnificent convention in November in Washington, D.C. And I look forward to everybody being here, and we'll be back in touch with everybody within the next several days. Oh, please, Muteba, our secretary, wants to give a quick membership report. And then, and Chimarenga, who's got to drive a van back to Florida, says he damn sure better be quick. Go ahead.
Uhuru comrades. I just wanted to give a report on the members and organizations that have joined over the course of this conference. There have been 4 individual memberships.
Right on.
As well as 1 youth-based organization to join the coalition.
Right on.
And everyone should have already received their membership cards, individual membership cards. If not, you can meet me at that table to the right. And the organizations that joined should have those mailed out before the end of the week. Also, if you do want to join the coalition at any point, you can meet us at the table or fill out an application online. All right, Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, brothers and sisters and comrades. It's been a splendid conference, and forward to Washington, D.C. Uhuru. Let's see you for a moment. Oh, wait a minute, what? I'm told there was some food left over if people wanted to take some food with you. Glenn, all right, man.